Welcome back to the Everything Property Podcast. Now, not too long ago, we sat down with Melina Costantino to discuss how you can control and purchase property with virtually no or little money down through put and call options. In that episode, I promised to have on the podcast some guests who have talked the talk and walked the walk using property options. Now, not only has today's guest gone and done this, but you will be quite impressed with just how well it has turned out for him. But it didn't start that way. You could say he started from zero, or in his case, negative about $400,000 on the verge of bankruptcy, and has built it to a business and portfolio in the 9-figure range. If that's not impressive, then check out the YouTube as well, because this guy makes me look small. Mark Rolton, welcome to the Everything Property Podcast.
Thanks for having us. Great to meet you.
Yeah, too easy, man. Well, look, thanks for coming from the sunny Gold Coast. You can see that with the tan, but you've got quite an interesting story, my friend. I've listened to a few podcasts. I've done a little bit of research in the Mark Rolton story. Mate, tell me of those days as a kid in Woodridge, southeast Queensland, what it was like.
Mate, well, it's a very broad conversation, but it was rough. You know, it was tough. I never saw my parents. My dad had 2 jobs. He was a coal miner and ran a furniture removal business through the day.
Yeah.
Mate, he was clicking 18, 22-hour days.
Jesus.
And my mum worked in a second-hand furniture centre 7 days a week. So come the weekend, you just look at your sister and say, what are we doing? That was sort of like the 80s, mate, you know, and every house in the street was the same. There was no money. DV was all-time high. Someone was screaming at somebody. You hear it 4 doors away. There was never any money. All the arguments in my home revolved around the lack of cash. So, I mean, that's the betting ground. That's the foundation. It was not unusual.
And so how did that play a role in you going to school and thinking, you know, obviously that's not a life I want to live? How did you then navigate, or what was your big idea, or how was your plan as an adult or growing into adulthood? How are you going to go down a different pathway, or was that just what you thought was going to happen to you? Or
it certainly wasn't fate, David. No, it was a choice. I remember being at school, and there was just nothing there on offer. You know, that's not to be elitist. It was just there was nothing but fights, people being stabbed with fishing knives. I mean, it was just full on. It was a big school, no rules, nothing. It was chaos. So I just went to my mum and dad and said, look, you know, I just need to get out of here. Can I leave? And they're like, absolutely not, under any circumstances. That was grade 8, and I was prepared to go. Stuck it out for grade 9, and then about 3/4 through grade 10, just said, I'm done. But I got an apprenticeship as a carpenter at that point.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah, so that just sort of started to formulate some different ideas. You know, I went out and started working, as everybody does, weekends at school. I think I was 14, working in a car wash, and that just put some bucks in the pocket. I thought that was just more sensible. It felt a little bit more enterprising to be involved in something, be sitting at school and going nowhere.
What were your mates doing at that time?
Great question.
Did you have any
I think we all know the answer to that one.
Yeah. What's
all part of that subculture.
When does that sort of rift separation happen?
Yeah, it was probably around then when I left school. There would have been a dozen of us that all packed up school about grade 10, 16, and we all became tradies. So that delineation was then.
Okay, so you had a bunch of mates that went into the trade as well?
Yeah. Plumbers, sparkies, the whole lot. We all became tradies.
And how long do you last being a tradie before you sort of started running your own company?
I finished my apprenticeship. I would have been just turned 20, and then thought, I can't work in an environment where you don't make a lot of money. I need to start doing my own thing. Mm-hmm. So about 20, I started employing a couple of guys, and it went really well. You know,
as a chippy?
Yeah, as a chippy, ran a gang. And it was good because, integrity was very important to me. You know, my dad was always pretty strong on values. So when you committed to something, you finished it on that date. Makes sense? Didn't ask for any more money. There was no variation. So became quite trusted in that small world of being able to perform. So then I started pushing for bigger contracts, high-rise, commercial, shopping centres, public schools. Yeah. And then it really took off. I mean, we're sort of, early 20s and doing okay.
Okay, if you're doing projects that size, you're making a little bit of money.
Yeah.
What are you doing with the money at that stage? Early 20s, you
Well,
know?
mate, yeah, good question. I bought my first block of land at 16. I can coerce my parents to go guarantor on the loan.
At 16?
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought if I could get a block of dirt, rather than just being a chippy, I might be able to build a house and make some money.
Mm-hmm.
But about 18, 19 months later, I got an offer. It was a lot more. And the profit that I made out of the block of dirt was more than I earned in a year.
What do you buying a block of land for in the 90s?
Easy, man, easy. There's a bit of space between you and I.
Yeah, but I know like Southeast Queensland was cheap probably 5 years ago before it had its run, but we're going back a
long way.
So your block of land's what?
38,900 and sold it for 49. So I made more in that year out of a property than I did out of working. So that bends your thinking, right?
Yeah.
I've done all this. I've done 40, 50 hours a week as an apprentice. It's hard. And then I'd already made more money on something on the side. So that sort of put the gears in motion for me of, right, I need to be in property.
Who inspired you, though, with property back in those days? Because you're not getting it from your parents, right?
No, good question. I don't know. I've had that question before.
Yeah.
It definitely didn't come from my mum and dad.
Yeah.
They
no
were
books,
serious
mentors, anything like that? Or
no.
Nothing.
There was no family friends. There was no sort of uncle. Yeah. There really wasn't. It was just, I don't know, the idea hatched. My parents thought I was fucking crazy. My dad looked at me and he goes, the repayments are $112 a week. You earn 171. And he was being honest. He was just being caring, I suppose. He thought I was stupid. Have you done the math? Yeah. Like, yeah, okay. It's going to be tight.
Yeah.
But sold that, then moved on, as I said, and then started employing a lot more guys and got into heavy commercial construction. That went really well, really well. And then one day, a large construction engineering firm out of Germany didn't pay. Mm-hmm. That changed the course forever. That's where the bankruptcy came in.
Tell us about that story, because that's the low point. Like, that's one of the low points, right?
It's happening a lot now. You see it everywhere. You know, tradies have got everything on the line. Every cent that's owed to them, you know, is precious. And builder, project manager, something turns around and says, we're not going to pay, see you in court. They know they don't have the financial resources to win. And that was my predicament. So back then, that was a lot of money. And I was already at uni studying full time. I'd appointed a manager to my company. And found myself 431 grand in debt. Most of that owed to the ATO. That was interest accruing daily.
Wow.
So it was serious. You could buy a house back then for 120, 140. I was 431 below red, right? That was 3 houses, 4 houses in today's math. 22 years of age, people just didn't fathom what that meant. Today, that's 3.5, 4 mil.
Yeah.
Maybe a touch more. So it was pretty scary shit. And then I realised, out of uni, I've got to get back into property or something.
You're studying engineering at uni, was it?
Yeah. Structural engineering. Second year, pulled out, and then thought, you know, I'd got to make some money fast. And then went hard into property.
Who did you turn to at that stage?
It was funny, mate. It was quite serendipitous. I pulled out of uni around the October.
Is this like a, fuck, Dad told me this was going to happen moment?
Well, I just figured I've got to make some money and I've got to make a large lump. You know, it can't be 60 grand. It can't be $10 an hour working as a job. Mm. It's got to be a lump to pay down 431 or I'm out, I'm KO'd. And strangely, I knew of a guy that was in air conditioning and he did projects on the side. And I rang him and I said, listen, what do you got going on? What would I do? Where would I start? And he goes, as a matter of fact, don't. I'm about to go over myself. Yeah. I've got all this land. I can't sell it. And my air conditioning business is the only thing that's keeping me alive. So anyway, I did a deal and I made 42 grand in the space of 28 hours, 30 hours.
Tell us the stitch together of that.
Oh, I just said to him, what have you got? And he said, look, I've got these 6 blocks of land. They're across the road from a Coles supermarket. He told me the number that he needed to get out. And I knew of a guy that was a builder, of course. And I said, listen, I got these. And they're about a $28,000 discount to retail. Mm. He goes, oh, I'm in. 6 of them. I said, mate, they're registered, ready to go. This poor guy's bleeding. He said, great, I'll see you there tomorrow. So I walked out, had no idea what to say, where they even were. Yeah. Found them.
Where were you talking? In Queensland?
Mate, in the Ridge, in the Woodridge. Mate.
Wow, in the Ridge.
And mate, the grass was 4 foot high. Oh. There's rubbish, nappies, shopping trolleys, car bodies all over them, right? They've been registered for months. And I said, yeah, listen, Stuart, this is a good idea. And he just looked at me and goes, well, they're registered. I'll take them. And I think I made like $7,000 or something per block by 6 blocks. $42,000 back then was insane. That's 80 grand today. Mm-hmm. And that was literally in a day at a bit. And Stuart was stoked. Brian's happy. He's finally got him off his books.
Yeah.
So $42,000, and then just took that idea of optioning stuff. I had no money to settle them, clearly, and I would have paid stamps anyway. So I took that idea and just rolled it on a bigger scale, and came across a couple of developers that were in trouble. Just said, listen, what do you got? Got this site. They said you could get 56 townhouses on it. I put under option. The next day I walked in the council and she said, no, you won't get 56, you'll get 93. We've changed the whole zoning around there. There's a whole new road thoroughfare going in. There's a high school across the road. It's going to be upgraded. They're going to spend $122 million upgrading that. And I was just like, really?
Yeah.
So hence I went straight back to some other developers and said, guys, listen, 93.
Yeah.
That made me just over $1,066,000.
$1,066,000 from that, from selling on that option deal. Are you paying?
That was 34 days too, by the way. By the time I got the deal together and flicked it on,
is there anything approved? No DA approved?
It was raw.
Raw land.
What I'd optioned it for, it almost doubled in density. So it was 93 keys.
And that original developer had no idea about it?
He just wanted out, mate. The two of them wanted out.
Wow.
Yeah. And they were not the savviest guys, but they still knew what they were doing. The council had made a shift and didn't tell them. And I had another guy over here that had so much funding, it was ridiculous. It didn't matter what he touched, someone would fund it. He was a very competent guy. Yeah. Mid-40s, very talented, wealthy guy. And, he crushed it. He made 9.2 out of it. I made just over $1 million.
9.2 by developing it out, the full thing out.
Yeah. That's a long time ago, man. So that was
$1 million $1 million back then is a very large amount of money.
Yeah,
like it is today, but like.
Sure. Now this is 2003.
Wow.
It was a long time ago, mate.
So how does it roll on from there? That probably clears your debt.
Yeah, paid off the ATO.
Paid off the ATO. Do you close that company? You keep it running?
No, wrap all that. Just bury it all.
Wrap it, bury it up.
Start again.
What are you doing? You've got a little bit of money under your belt now, and how do you start to grow? How do you start to find other deals? What are some of the other ones you've stitched together?
Yeah, I went on a rampage after that, mate. It's a long story. Just did deal after deal. I got in pretty hard with Stockies. Back then it was Australand, now called Frasers, MAB Corp. Those guys were all on a march, all desperate for stuff. Delphin was around back then. Just kept punching deals through. It was 200 blocks, it was 800 blocks, it was 4,000 blocks. We just kept going crazy. It was from Perth to Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney. It was everywhere.
So you're finding that you yourself, you got a team?
2 guys employed at that stage.
Yeah.
Myself, and I was on a plane 3 days out of 7, 4 days out of 7.
Yeah.
And the boys would just run research, run hard, and just be talking to vendors the whole time.
Wow. Yeah.
We used to direct contact. It's not sophisticated. It was, fire out a contact in the mail. She'd ring you and just say, listen, I know what you're trying to do. I've spoken to my neighbours. You're trying to amalgamate the whole 5 of us. Well, yeah, it's no secret.
Yeah.
What do you think it's worth? Oh, $2 million. I'll give you 2.3. Really? I'll be there tomorrow night. I'd jump on a plane and fly to Adelaide, stitch the 5 together and then punch it off to somebody else, They'd do a DA and then flog it to the retail market, So, and then just looked at the opposition and thought, what are they doing wrong? Where are they falling short? Because these guys weren't exactly bright guys. They were no
You're
different.
talking
My ultimate buyers, developers back then, they weren't highly sophisticated in their thinking. And I thought, what are they doing poorly? How can I capitalise on that? And they were delivering projects, but they didn't know how to exit them very well. So I could build, obviously. I could put the deal together. Mm-hmm. With the DA, I could fund anything. I knew that if I optioned for 2 and was now worth 4, any bank would lend you money.
Yeah.
So I just looked at how I could do the exit strategies better. How could I shift product, blocks of dirt, low-end townhouses, fast? How could I sell them quickly? Because that was the linchpin. That was the problem they were facing.
Okay, so how'd you do that?
Simple. Because it was under option, I wasn't having any interest or holding costs. So townhouses, let's just say circa $1 million, I could sell for $981. So the interest that they were paying off to a bank whilst they were arguing with the council to get the DA, I was saving $300, $400, $450 grand interest over that 2-year period. Make sense?
Yep.
So I just discount them, 16, 18, 19 grand. People aren't stupid.
Yep.
They'd walk in and go, we've been to Stockland's estate, we've been another one down the street.
So you then started, you've then transitioned from optioning and selling on to those guys to developing out your own house and land packages?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then you're selling in bulk?
Absolutely.
Okay, on the market. Understand.
Townhouses,
Yep.
H&L packs, the whole lot.
For anyone out there, I've done it quite a bit, but for anyone out there that's thinking that wants to go out and approach landowners, what tips do you have for them?
Great question. There's got to be a motivation to the vendor, right? And you can't start with money because you'll miss a lot of good deals. Just ask them, what are you trying to achieve by selling the property? What's this about? Start that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And be genuine, look for a solution. Oh, look, I hate the idea of being surrounded by 150 townhouses, or the whole place has changed. When we moved here, it was semi-rural. Now it's just, so dense. Great. What are you trying to do? Where are you trying to get to? Oh, I'd love to go up to Central Coast and retire. Let's talk about that. And you just become the provider of the solution. Don't get heavy on the conversation about just dollars, numbers and cents, because you'll piss off a lot of vendors. Mate, they've raised a family. They've been there 26 years or 35 years. And you come in there hot, dressed like you, looking fast.
Here we go.
And all of a sudden, they're offended.
Mm.
They're on the back foot, like, I don't really like her. I don't like him. Honey, let's talk about it. Let's think about it. Versus, I'm on your team. I'm in your corner. Listen, where do you want to go? Oh, Tuggerah. Nice place. How much is the house there? Oh, 3.5, somewhere near the water. So what do you think this is worth? 4? What if I gave you 4 too? Would that be a conversation worth having? Just be very, very simple. Be very integrous about your discussions. Don't be sort of slippery, and you've got to stitch it together.
Yep.
And a lot of people come from a place of scarcity. You've got to come from a place of this deal's already together. Have an abundant sort of position.
Are you doing put and calls or just calls?
No. Put and calls are too dangerous.
Explain the difference because we ran through with Melina a couple of weeks back the difference. But if anyone's listening to this, sees Mark Rolton, listens to it, hasn't flicked back yet to listen to it, just quickly, if you can, high level difference between put and call options.
Call option, I have the right to exercise the option to settle it, but you can't force me to. I don't have the obligation to. Put and call, I am forced to settle at the other end.
Perfect.
Now, what's so lucrative about a call option is I can give you a lot more money. If the market's 4 and I give you 5, it's hard to say no. Right? So I let the numbers sort of be the litmus test, not the documentation, not the mechanism. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And sometimes they're lawyers. The vendor's lawyer will say, put and call only. And I'll say, no, we've missed something. I want the flexibility. If I don't get the DA, you still own the property. But if I get the DA, will I give you 5 instead of 4? Are you still okay with that, Brad? Yeah.
Got you.
So it doesn't have to be a put and call. It's a little dangerous. Why would you use a put and call? Just use a delayed settlement under a contract.
Yeah, true.
Don't
It's
do
just two. Literally, it's 2 options, and I think the conclusion we came to in that episode was call options being very favourable. I mean, for both parties, but also for the developer to be able to protect themselves. But
My word.
what sort of back in those days? What sort of option fees you're putting down?
Oh, that varies.
Percentage of property price?
No, there's no rule of thumb.
Okay.
Look, you have a vendor. We just did a deal the other day. 4 vendors, $1,000 each. One said, "I'll take 10." So 3 got $1,000. One couple pops up and says, "I want 10 grand." Fine, no big deal.
You take that off the price of the property?
Of course.
Always, not just cash. Oh, fuck, he knows what he's talking about, huh?
But sometimes they might say 50, they might say 500. It's all negotiable,
What was that deal?
It's a pretty sweet little deal.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's I can't say too much. It's a residential development.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fruitful. It's hovering around the 66% as a yield. Yeah,
Wow.
Which a lot of people just go, huh, what? Bullshit. It's still possible. Depends what you're doing.
Okay.
Depends the upside that you can build into it too. How much influence you have over accounts.
Maybe we'll talk offline about that when we don't have everyone else listen. So, all right, what happens after that, Mark? You start to get into the house and land packages. We're in, what are we, in early 2000s at this stage? Is that the...
Mid-2000s.
Mid-2000s?
You've got some momentum now, yeah.
What are we doing next? What was the story after that?
Obviously, well, my personal opinion is when you have all these developers running around making a fortune, they're not terribly good at keeping it.
Mm.
They live the lifestyle, they burn it up, You know, it's all about sort of looking good, smelling good. For me, I got a bit of a slap in the face. You probably know the story, but I got some time with Rich Dad in the book, Keith Cunningham. And, mate, he set things very straight for me.
Yeah, this is good. This is a good lesson.
It was a great lesson.
Yeah,
I was making sort of 12, 14 million a year, 13 million a year net, sometimes 16 million a year net. It was going well.
Yep.
You know, I was building some assets. It was all cash. It was going great. And then he turned around and just said, nah, you're a fucking loser like the rest of them. You're just a glorified, you know, gambler. And that was hard to swallow. He was just a very straight, down and out guy. Listen, this is what I've learned. I've been worth a lot of money and I've been bankrupt and I'm a multi-billionaire and it's probably time to listen, my friend. I was like, okay, I'm going to get something of great wisdom here. And he said, you must turn to passive cash flow.
What happens when you stop?
Yeah, zero. And that was his argument. So for the space of 4 days, sitting there in Hawaii, I got it loud and clear. He was very respectful, a real gentleman. And there was no ego, no arrogance whatsoever. He just said, I care about you. I think you got some good ideas, but you're travelling on the wrong road. So I came back to Australia and said, fuck it, that's it. Projects are going to be 10% of our focus. We're going to steer a portfolio that's going to be worth couple $100 million. Everyone thought I was crazy. Even my peers were like, fuck are you talking about? You've got these projects scattered all over the place. You've got developers hunting you for sites. Why the fuck would you even bother with home parks? Like, what's that all about? And then one of them, I was in Perth actually, a good friend of mine, having a drink, and he goes, how much time do you spend on them park things each week? And I went, things.
The park things.
And he goes,
I see a little park, whatever you do.
Right?
Cool. Yeah.
And I said, oh, look, 15, 20 hours, it's not that big a deal. You know, Roger, and he just looks at me and he goes, you're wasting your time. Seriously, I've got to tell you, we've all talked about it. So I switched over to passive income and started buying home parks and started developing home parks and over 55s lifestyle, that sort of lane. And that has proven to be so fruitful. That's only been a 7-year burn.
Yep.
And yeah, it's incredible.
What's the best part about it?
You're not doing much for it. It's the headspace, it's the hard drive. It takes very little to steer it, you know. Projects are very, very involved, you know yourself. There's a lot of moving parts.
So is that just because you're buying the parks, maybe you're doing some upgrade to amenities? Like, obviously, I don't know too much about holiday parks, but is that just because it's basically a land lease to someone to come and put their caravan on?
These are not holiday parks. This is a land play.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you got houses made in a factory, as you know. They wheel them out, put them on site. You can sell the houses or you can rent them out.
Yep.
But you and I ideally own the land.
Okay.
And that's the win. So you've got all these sort of assets that are producing, you know, $1, $2 million, $3 million a year net.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a multitude of them. You're doing pretty good. But the way that rents are in our current landscape, they're a moving target. You know, rents moved up last year by 18.26% in a year. That's extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
So you can almost say that your portfolio moved by 20%.
But what about is this short-term rental accommodation?
Yes, both. It can be short and long.
How do you...
There's no definition in legislation as to what defines a short-term accommodation solution.
In terms of length of occupancy?
Correct. Which is very ambiguous, which is great. You can appeal to contractors 1 month, and the next month, you know, someone walks in and says, I want to lease the place and I'll be here forever till I die. How'd
you go with that through COVID? If it's been a 7-year burn?
Yeah, great question. Initially, COVID was pretty scary, only because of the same issues everyone faced, was the scare fear factor. Once that settled and people now realised I either want to downsize, move away, I want to work from home, then that rental conversation took off. So rents moved about 40%, and that portfolio is, you know, nearly 2,000 income-producing assets today.
Really? Across your parks?
Yeah, just over 1,700.
Jesus.
With a small development pipeline to come. So, yeah. So
you're building some of those fixed versions on them. Some of the tents that are up on thing, and some of the cabins.
Yeah, houses. Yeah.
Houses.
So, and that's been the play.
That's been the play for the last 7 years. We've got a gap between that early 2010s.
Yeah, just projects.
projects.
More and more projects of different scale.
How have you went about building your network, finding those people, getting in the room with them, getting them to I mean, anyone messages a billionaire, they're going to probably not reply or tell you to where to go. How do you get access to these people? How are you building your network and being that sort of person?
That's a great question. Mate, I'd start off just by saying you need to bring value to the table.
And how were you then?
Oh, simple. I was in parks. I mean, I've got quite a few billionaires in Aussie that I work with. And they're so curious about parks.
Yeah.
One in particular is a funny guy. He's like, have we got parks? No. We should start. Like, he's got shit all over the place. So bring value, and work on yourself. Read. Be so well read. It's not that complicated, Dave, Yeah. Bring value. You're never going to get a start with a billionaire if you just add some value. Think about it. What can I offer? What's this person's interest? How can I research that before I arrive? How can I deliver something to them? But yeah, I've been very fortunate. Those networks have been, a real cornerstone for me. Yeah.
Did you live in the US for a bit? What did you do over there?
Property, learned options.
Okay.
Yeah, I bought it back here.
With anyone over there?
No, surprisingly, no. I had a couple of mates that lived through Illinois and places like that. Just hung out with them, and they knew a lot of very wealthy guys from LA.
Yeah.
And there was this idea of, options this and we option that. We don't pay for it, we just control it. So for 2.5 years, I was based in Phoenix and Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And then came home with that idea and then went hard at it.
You're still using property options today?
Oh, yeah. My word.
What's been your biggest lesson so far in property? Property and life, I want to. What's been your biggest in property? Something that sticks with you?
I would probably say do your own thing. Run your own race. I would actually say stay away from these ideas of partnerships and what have you. I'm not a big fan of that. I've seen a lot of people, smart people, waste a lot of time and burn a lot of money by just partnering with somebody or feel that they need someone. Go at your own. Do it yourself.
Do your own thing.
Yeah.
What gave you the confidence, though? I mean, back in those days, everyone's doing something different to you. You're going the exact opposite direction.
That's true.
What with obviously no proof of concept on your own, what gave you the confidence to go, you know what, I'm going to have a running crack at this compared to...
Well, it's all theory
let's just the path well traveled, do what everyone else is doing. You just went, nah, you know what, I've done this one deal, I'm going to run at it. Where do you get that from? Is that you born with that mentality or?
I don't think so. Yeah. I certainly was not. My counter would be that I was looking at the results that were coming or possible, and on that theory, it should work. And the first deal was testament to that. 42 grand in a bit over a day was unheard of. It was cash. I'm like, all I need is another 9, 10 deals like this, and the ATO's paid out. That wasn't hard.
Yeah.
You with me? So it made sense at that point. All I had to do was scale it. Well, the next deal was a bit of a windfall. Yeah. $1,066,000 was not what I was expecting, clearly. But it did allow me to sort of prove concept at that point. So I guess it was looking at the idea, the concept, and saying, yes, this should work. It has done before.
Do you think options still work today?
Oh, God, yes. You don't think stockies is all using phrases?
What about...
You don't think MAB called it indigo?
100%. In the low to medium res sort of area.
I think, look, here's the answer. For the sophisticated, yes. Yep. For those that don't think it's possible, they go out there and keep borrowing money. Yep. That's a dead-end street. If you want scale and you want velocity to that, you're going to have to learn how to control shit and not buy it. True or false?
True.
You're not going to have the bank funding that you need. You just will not be able to get it on a zero start. So for me, it was kind of like it proven it up. And there were some very intelligent people sitting across the table saying, that fucking works. You've got this and you've got a DA with that. Yes. You haven't settled yet. No. You've sold 84 townhouses out of 106. Yes. Fuck, we'll fund that tomorrow. Next, what else have you got? And I started running through the pipeline, the workbook. And they were a lot smarter than me going, that fucking works. That totally works. That's the sort of, I suppose, that's the start you want. You're not going to do it by going into NAB and saying, listen, give me 3 million to start. Give me 6 million next week. Another 15 the week after that. Yeah. It ain't going to happen. And if you did, you'd fold under that debt load anyway.
What's been your biggest mistake?
Listening to too many people.
Listening to too many.
Yeah.
Their opinions on property and that kind of stuff.
For sure.
But what about deals wise? Like, have you cooked a contract? Have you, thrown 50 grand at something, 100 grand, $1 million? What's been the biggest loss?
I've been lucky. Here's an interesting thing for you to consider. In 17 years, aggressively doing projects, haven't lost $1 in a development.
What do you mean by haven't lost? You've obviously spent, but what do you mean by loss?
Every project has profited.
Okay.
Every single one has come out in the black, which is not normal. 17 years, 3,000 keys plus.
Yeah.
That's not normal. So options have been that barrier, have been that safety net. Make sense? They've alleviated the risks from the beginning.
So you've never optioned off something that you've tried to run a DA, haven't got it approved?
Never failed on a DA.
Okay.
I negotiate. Because I don't own it and haven't got 40 grand a month worth of holding costs, I'm not desperate. I just sit there in the council and say, listen, we can work together or you can hate me. If it works for the community, it works for you, great, I'm in. It's got to be commercial. But if you're going to say no, well, I won't spend 250 grand the DA, I won't even start it. I don't have to be here.
Yeah, okay.
And the dynamic changes very quickly. The power shifts, you can see it. The council doesn't have me over a barrel, so I can walk away. I'm not God, but I can provide some solutions. And I do have some housing ideas that you guys might need. It actually might win your political seat next round of elections. Yeah, okay. It's not very often, mate, we get resistance. It's a different approach.
Yeah, because
very different.
The battle with, approvals and councils and getting that stuff through is probably, if you're not building, probably your biggest headache. So, Matt, any tips and tricks you're willing to share to be able to work with those guys?
As I said, don't be desperate.
Okay.
Have an option. If you've got holding costs, you signed a contract and it's burning on you, then you don't have a place. I don't have a place of power. Mm-hmm. The council dictates how it's going to look, right? For me, I just make it very clear. I don't own it. It doesn't bother me. You can say no, I walk away. But if you think it'll be a benefit to the community, let's continue. And quite often they'll come around.
Tell me, let's run through high level in terms of your process from, do you pick the area first? Do you go out to see what landowners or who comes to you? How do you sort of go from selecting an area, getting an option, DA, picking your site team and running through and delivering the project? Could we just do sort of like a mini start to finish? So anyone that's picked up that episode from Melina and thinks, or is hearing this from you, is thinking, okay, this how does this play out? How does this look? Timeline as well. How does it play out? How does it look for someone listening along at home?
Well, we look for the lowest socioeconomic areas. Today in the market, it's all affordability. So you target a lower socio-demographic. You look at the research, you look at supply, you look at demand. Mm-hmm. Work backwards from there. Then go target areas that essentially have what we call intrinsic value. So I'm looking for what I identify as a blueprint. It's one single house. It's on 10,000, 15,000 square metres. Blueprint. Carve the house off and then get a DA for 74 blocks of land, 102 townhouses. Make sense? So I already know there's going to be demand. There's no question. Yep. All I've got to be able to do is now get the DA. Now there's a bit of magic sauce in the DA.
Here we go. Yeah.
Depends how much you want to pay me. How far we can go. So the DA, the formula in the DA is to have good quality reporting every turn. The council will not fight your war without the artillery to do so. They need ammo in the chamber. So if you come back with a 2-page report of, the vegetation's fine, good luck with the DA. But if it comes back at 38 pages and we've considered every yellow-necked frog in the whole fucking district, and we know this will not have an impact, make sense? Every car is recorded. Every traffic vehicle movement is recorded. If we're thorough and comprehensive in that approach, it's very unlikely that DA will get turned down. Now, the DA provides an enormous amount of uplift. If you're smart, you've optioned the deal, let's say you've optioned it for 4. That DA will add somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million worth of soft equity. Now, with $1.5 million soft equity, I've only got to develop 30 blocks in stage 1. Make sense? I've got a DA for 74. If I do 20, 30 in stage 1, I'm off. But with 1.5 million of soft equity and the whole 20 blocks sold before I settle, it's a formula to win. Because the banker looks at it and goes, DA's approved. Fantastic. There's 1.5 soft equity. You've sold 20 of the 20 in stage one. Yeah, of course I did. How the fuck did you do that? I just sold them $9,000 cheaper because I wasn't incurring interest holding costs along the way. I just gave the buyer the discount that I was saving. Okay. Got it. You sold 20 from 20 or 20 from 25. Yes. Unconditional. Here's a sales spreadsheet. Got it. I just go ahead and develop 20 blocks.
Yeah, okay.
I've already made $3.5 million net after GST out of 20. True? Got it?
Yep.
That's it. So that timeline can be anywhere from isolate an opportunity, get the property under control, application to DA, somewhere between 3 and 7 months. De-application, if you're doing it smart, you're doing it well, under code, which we don't do MCUs. If I do it under code, somewhere between a 4-month and a 6-month burn for a DA approval. So I'm in the ground by 13, 14 months production.
And then it would just depend on that size of the build, right?
Yeah. Well, if you want to get started, I'd recommend going to land estates because, your construction period's between sort of 16 and 19 weeks. That's it. Bulk earthworks, roads, titles, out, gone. Sell the blocks, move on.
Okay, so you're not even building the house and land packages, you're just blocks of land.
Outsource the build, somebody else sites their houses on your dirt, correct.
Perfect.
But you don't build anything, no. I think built form when you start is quite dangerous. It's too heavy to fund.
Okay. So are you building your own stuff today or you're just doing that?
Yeah.
You are building today?
Yeah.
What do you...
But if I was to start again, I would not build a thing. It'd just be land estates, in and out fast.
Okay.
And regional, sub-regional, metro fringe.
Great.
Demands, mate, it's extraordinary.
Yeah, of course. Well,
we've got clients running around, mate, that are selling 63 blocks of land in 4 weeks.
Nice.
First development, never done it before. That's regional.
Queensland?
Oh, no.
New South Wales?
Yeah, all of it. Bar Melbourne, of course.
Yeah, okay. What, Melbourne they're not touching because of land tax? Interesting. Well, talk to me a little bit about that. How, Australia's housing crisis, what are your thoughts, feelings, emotions?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, without getting too political.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you solve it? Well, obviously planning's a major issue today. We know that. Everybody's saying, every CEO, GM, exec, on a public company in property is saying the same thing. There's got to be less restriction on planning, more ease with density, more flexibility in design. I don't think that's going to come from local councils. It's not going to come from that level of government. I think the state government will have to intervene in the next year or two to speed this up. I mean, when they say 1.2 million shortage of houses, it's probably closer to 2 mil. That's the reality.
You think you're just undercooking that number
of course,
a bit?
It just sounds better, So I think the reality is that it's a great time to be a landlord. How do we solve it? You and I come up with better housing solutions. We've been recently approached by a state government agency to turn one of our assets into social housing.
Yeah.
One of the parks that I own, they've targeted us and sort of said, listen, here's a possibility. That is an extraordinary windfall.
Yeah.
About 43 million profit net.
Wow.
Government subsidised on a 15 by 15 year lease. And we'll give you a grant to build the fucking thing. That's where it's heading now. And I would say in the next...
Can I put an option to you to buy that? Well, how did that deal come about?
Oh, well, there's obviously a few people that we know, but I mean, ultimately, the government has to come up with some solutions. That's what governments are supposed to do. So I just think that you and I, one of two things, we get better with design, we get better at deliverables, you and I, as a private enterprise, or we jump on the coattails of a government agency and then exploit that. Because that's what you and I are good at. Entrepreneurs are great at exploiting opportunity. And the government needs solutions. They will not do it on their own accord. We know how useless they can be. There's one or two ways of doing it, right?
What is your next goal for the next sort of 5-10 years? You've built up now. We're saying it's a 9-figure sort of portfolio, property and business.
No business.
No business, just property.
There's no value to business.
What's the next goal then? What are you looking to reach towards? Is it a number? Is it a lifestyle? Is it a... Yeah. I see the cars. I see the boats. What are you working towards?
Yeah, look, great question. I mean, I've only got one daughter, so I don't need a lot.
Yeah.
But look, we've as a group, we're in the throes right now of cementing some ideas. And I think between here and the Olympics for Australia is going to be a very fruitful time. Very fruitful. Look at what happened in Sydney in 2000. We've got that exact repeat in Brisbane. It's coming. And that's an incredible surge, not in interest, but in values. So the roadway I see between here and there is it will double our portfolio inside the next 6.5 years. Between now and the Olympics, we'll double it.
Do you think
I don't think it'll be very hard.
Do you think the Olympics is the catalyst, or do you think that people saying that the Olympics is coming is the catalyst, and everyone that FOMO, everyone driving up to driving into the Brisbane market now, because the Olympics is a 2-week event.
I hear you. Well, all over the world, whether it be centric to Sydney or not, all over the world, it definitely brings a shift in economic gain. Whether it's attention, tourism, a mix of the two. People finally identify Australia as a great place to be. Let's put money in investment, foreign investment. I don't know the full answer to that, but I will say that it always creates enormous amount of upside. So you ask the question, and I'll define the answer. Between now and the Olympics, we'll at least double where we are today. It won't be very hard.
Double?
Yeah, 6.5 years, for sure.
Shit.
Oh, for sure. It's not complicated, is it?
There's some work to be done, but yeah, I get the systems are in place, and it's rinse and repeat, right?
Yeah, I think too when you've got a baseline aggregate capital, it's not very hard to cycle that up. Starting from zero, that's a bit more. It took 17 years to get here.
So if you had to start from zero now, someone listening to this, starting from zero, what are you doing?
Just options.
Options, same thing again.
Lower socio-demographic, from scratch.
Greenfield?
Yeah.
Okay.
Call options.
Call options, Greenfield.
Find a dozen buying groups, ultimate buyers, and just go get what they want. Don't do the deal first. Do the deal first. Do the relationship first. Do the requirements of the ultimate buyer first. That's what I did.
Okay. And what's been your biggest challenge so far, business-wise and personal-wise?
Personal-wise, look, there's been a few. Divorce comes to mind.
Yeah.
That's never an easy cycle, that one.
Was that a rebuild, total rebuild, or what?
Yeah, it was, yeah. Yeah, strip down, start again. But that was fine.
What year? If you don't mind me asking. Sorry, I don't want to get too personal.
September 2020.
Yeah.
September 23.
Yeah, okay.
So, and that's fine, it makes us better as men. That rebuild is an extraordinary journey because now it's deliberate. The first time you've got to work it all out. The second time it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing. It's up to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
That was a beautiful, beautiful process. Fucking hard.
In hindsight.
But it was very special, yeah. It was good. I'd say probably on a personal level, I lost a little girl a few years ago.
Sorry to hear.
Yeah, that was hard. I mean, and again, it makes us better. It definitely makes us better. Sometimes I think that we get a little comfortable and we become very good at commerce and enterprise. As men, we sort of become quite driven. We specialise in a field, we become good at it, we get rewarded for it. We go hard, you get better and better at it.
Yeah.
And it becomes quite addictive by nature. And I think sometimes life has other lessons for you and I in store.
Talk to me a little bit about mindset.
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone's got a different version of...
Yeah, what's your mindset? How do you sort of take and attack each day?
I think to be very clear about what you're in the game for. I've always been quite fortunate. There's been a very clear point on the horizon. And I think that makes the mindset, I think, follows that. We all need direction. We need a rudder. And I think when you and I are at our finest moment is when we're really on a march and we're clear about what that is. It's granular.
Have you hit that post-divorce?
Yes, for sure. It took a while.
Yep.
It was a bit of floundering. There was a good 18, 20 months in there of just lost.
Yep.
But, it did. And it was very different from the first time. The first time was all about the money, the numbers, the sums.
Yeah.
And this time was like, who am I taking with me?
Interesting. What's your point on your horizon then?
Now?
Yeah.
It's a great question. Well, it's quite varied today. It's broad. It's not just money.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a few parts of that that are all sort of in unison.
What are they?
You determine.
Yeah, come on, mate.
Mate, I want to have a couple more kids.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. A couple more children. I love kids. I think children make the best of us as men.
Mm-hmm.
And some other things too, some of the personal matters as well, some other leisure sort of things, leisure items.
Yeah.
And then as far as business, I really want to give it a good run.
Give it a good crack.
We're sort of, we recouped from the divorce. We got back to 100, and now I sort of see a 200, 250 milestone, which is not that complicated. We already have a plan in play.
Mm-hmm. How big is the team now?
Not very big. We've probably got, 15 in HQ.
Yep.
And we've got about 80 field staff, 90 field staff in parks.
Interesting.
Yeah, and field staff in general. But it's not that big at all. It's quite lean.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, look, the way I sort of summarise and wrap up these podcasts, Mark, at the end is I ask for two things. I ask for one golden nugget. What is that bit of information to share with the audience you haven't shared? Maybe, I don't know if you can pull something up, a bit of that secret sauce from earlier, but what's something that you haven't shared on a podcast or in a while that you can share with the audience?
Look, I think a lot of people tend to overthink what it takes to sort of hit 100. I know I did. I was guilty of that. I remember being a tradie, early 20s, and thinking, if I could be worth 10, 15, 20 million one day, that'd be fucking amazing. And I'm sitting at Smoko, everyone's whinging about their life and their job and how fucked it is, And that was a big number. But what I realised, sort of particularly mid-late 30s, was that when you've got 40, 50, you have access to money, which really gives you speed. Mm-hmm. So don't underestimate what can come of 10, 12, 13 years. That first 3 or 4 will be a grind. It's just punching hard. It's just making things work. There's never seems to be enough capital to go around. You know what I mean? Rob and Peter to pay Paul. But over time, there's a rhythm that comes, and it's like, okay, we've got a base. And all I've got to do is exercise that capital well, and I can get from 40 to 70 in a fairly short space of time, 70 to 100, easy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We underestimate what those timings look like.
It's that compound.
Yes, it is. It really is. It's sort of, getting in a raft and paddling with the river, with the current versus against it. And that first 3 or 4 years will feel like you're going upstream, not down.
Yeah, okay.
And we always seem to underestimate that.
What was that moment for you that it was sort of
the crest?
It went from pushing shit uphill to hang on, we've got some momentum here.
I would probably say 40.
40 years old?
Yeah, I'd say 40.
So how many years you're in? 20? You're in 20 years the game by then, or 15 years?
No, 20, probably 20-ish, give or take, yeah.
Okay.
I'd say 40.
Okay.
And it really was obvious. It was like, okay, Jesus. And then your accountant's sitting you down going, we've got some problems.
Yeah.
Fucking all this money, and there's this tax owing on all this.
Yeah.
That was sort of like one of those, turning points.
More money, more problems, so bring them on. Right.
I think we're okay with that, aren't we?
Of course. Look, to finish up, Mark, tell me, what is a quote you live your life by?
Probably one my father instilled would be, bite off as much as you can and chew like hell.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, look, Mark Rolton, appreciate you coming out and joining us on the Everything Property podcast. And strap on in, folks, because you heard it here first by the Olympics, doubling that that portfolio size. Looking forward to it, and want to watch looking forward to watching that journey.
Thanks, sir. Look forward to being it.